a comprehensive look at trends, fund profiles, and more in Exploring ETFs.
You know, there's a growing interest in marijuana, no pun intended. We're going to see how that pertains to ETFs with our ETF Research Director, Nina Mishra, who joins me now. So apparently even alcohol companies want to get in on this, huh?
Yes. So this has been one of the hottest areas of investing, and the first ETF that focused on marijuana stocks, that has been one of the best performers. So that is why there's rising investor interest. Alcohol companies are investing in cannabis companies because alcohol consumption is going down in the US, whereas pot consumption is rising, becoming more acceptable. So that is why they want to produce some cannabis and CBD infused drinks, which could be very popular. Then there is rising interest in medical benefits of cannabis too, particularly in areas like pain management and epilepsy treatment. So it has been accepted that cannabis and CBD could help in those areas. But cannabis remains illegal at the federal level in the US, even though 33 states and DC now have legalized medical use of marijuana, and 10 states and DC have legalized even recreational use too. And according to Barclays, the US market for cannabis is could be $28 billion if legalized today, and it could grow to $41 billion by 2028. So that is why there is a lot of growth potential in this area.
So it seems like a lot of different industries want a part of this. I'm hearing too where food companies are trying to come up with lines of food products with cannabis in it.
Exactly. So there is rising acceptance. It is becoming more mainstream, and because of medical benefits to many kind of alcohol food companies, they are getting interested in the area.
So you say the first U.S. listed marijuana ETF is up 32% this year.
Yes, it has done pretty well. And this was the only U.S. listed ETF option available to investors for maybe a little more than a year. Now this ETF had taken an unusual route to launch. It was a Latin America real estate ETF first, then they changed their focus and they became a marijuana ETF. So in that process, the custodian was not very happy because cannabis remains illegal at the federal level, so banks sometimes they do not want to be involved with those companies. So the custodian was not very happy about it. They had to change custodian. So there have been issues like that with that ETF, but now it got competition. Last month we saw the launch of another pot ETF by AdvisorShares, and there are at least a couple more in the pipeline, so the competition may grow in this space. And I think ETF options are good for investors because marijuana stocks are known for their volatility.
Yeah, it's an important note.
Yes, so they have high growth potential, but a lot of volatility too. So with ETFs, you get diversified exposure to this growing but volatile space.
All right, let's take a look at a couple of these. First, you've brought with you the ETFMG Alternative Harvest ETF.
So the ticker is MJ, and as I mentioned, first US listed marijuana ETF. So obviously there was a lot of investors' interest. It accumulated $1.3 billion in assets within about a year of its change in focus. It charges 75 basis points in expenses. So if you want to learn more about this ETF, you can go to the quote page on Zacks.com. And the expense ratio, as I mentioned, is 75 basis points. You can also go to the external homepage through the link on our website. You can look at the holdings and other details. Now this holds some related companies too in In addition to alcohol companies, you will see some tobacco companies, some fertilizer companies, which will benefit from growth of pot industry. Those kind of holdings companies you can see in this ETF. Of course, the largest holding is GW Pharmaceuticals, then well-known pot companies like Aurora Cannabis, Canopy Growth, and Kronos. They get a lot of representation in the portfolio.
Then the AdvisorShares Pure Cannabis ETF.
So this, as I mentioned, launched last month, and it has already accumulated more than 40 million in assets, which because of the investor interest in the area. This charge is just 1 basis points less than the other ETF than MJ, which is not significant at all, but it is actively managed, so which could be beneficial because this is again a growing, volatile, evolving space. So active management could add value for investors, and also this has pure cannabis exposure. It holds only cannabis-related companies, legal cannabis companies which are trading in Canada or in the US, because in Canada, pot is legal at the federal level. So that is why you will see a lot of Canadian companies and a lot of US companies.
Undiluted, anyway.
Yes, pure. And again, if you want to learn more about this ETF, you can go to our quote page on Zacks.com, 74 basis points expense ratio. You can go to the website for this ETF, AdvisorShares website. You can learn more, read their commentary, investor case. Looking at the holdings, you will see similar companies, but different weights. For example, the top holding is Green Organic, then CanTrust Holdings, which occupy more than 7% weight in the portfolio, Canopy Growth, and Aurora Cannabis, which had very high exposure in the earlier ETF, get about 5% representation here.
It's going to be interesting.
It definitely was going to be interesting.
Will they handle it like in the produce department, where organic brings a higher price tag than the domestic? You don't have to answer.
And I forgot to highlight that the ticker is YOLO for the second ETF.
Oh, yeah.
You only live once, so I think ticker is very interesting.
Again, interesting.
Yes.
Do you own either of these two?
I do not.
All right. So there's more ETF information, as always, in the ETF section of Zacks.com. Use the Funds tab in the top toolbar to help guide yourself there, and use the podcast button link at the bottom of the homepage to get to the ETF Spotlight podcast that Nina hosts and produces. With Nina, I'm Terry Ruffalo.